Last week, we welcomed Cat Montgomery from Dartmouth, along with her circular sock knitting machine, Millie, to the studio. She graciously came over to give us a demonstration on how Millie works. And we had such a good time that I completely forgot to tape an introduction. So, this is Cat and her sock knitting machine, Millie, and her lovely, very informative demonstration.
I wanted one, but I didn't want to pay for a new one. I thought I'll get a refurbished old one, get one still working. Not that easy to find, and they also run about $1,200 mostly. So I was talking to a fellow up in Quebec, in Chambord, Quebec, and they make them brand new, but they refurbish the old ones. They get old ones in. So it took about 2.5 years of talking back and forth with these very lovely Dave and Kathy Lord, um, to get a machine that was within my budget, because I told her what my budget was, and I didn't want it refurbished. I just wanted it working. Refurbished, basically blast off everything and repaint it and stuff. I didn't want that. I wanted it as is. And this one came into their shop and she called me right away. And I had it about a week later. I've had it for about a year now. And I have a counterbalance here because Millie weighs about 30 pounds. She's cast iron. Um, this is what came with it. There's another cylinder sitting there. That's the original 72 cylinder used to knit socks. I have a 64 in today to do some ladies' socks. So this cylinder is new, but the other cylinder is also 130 years old. Oh, wow. Yeah, and it's still in perfectly good work. I don't know where they had it stored, but it was in exceptional condition. Um, to cast on with them, that was the interesting part. First of all, I had to get a table for it to work on. I don't have I live in a very small home, so we don't really have a dining table, and I think it would have snapped it anyway because it's heavy. It's held on by a couple screws at the bottom. So my friend made me this counterweight, which is the bird cage, so this isn't tippy anymore. Otherwise, it would just tip over. You can use it by holding your foot on the rung, which I did for a while. But I mean, you want something a little more safer because if it falls and cracks, that's it. It's done. And antique iron is a little crusty, so we don't want that to happen. So in the olden days, we had a thing called a cast-on bonnet. That is an instrument of the devil.
Oh, I've never seen one.
This is what you sometimes see them. They look like umbrellas, and they're all usually bent and whatnot. These were inserted up through the middle. The thread goes through the mast and through the little holes, and then you have to pull out about 3 feet of it, and then you start by threading over one, over one, over, and you skip every other needle to get it cast on till you get to about here, and then you have to knit to get the rest of the needles up. And it makes like a spider web thing. As this starts to knit, it doesn't always catch all the stitches, but seems to be self-healing, meaning you can fix it. And this is why we put waste yarn in to begin our knitting for any of it. After I threaded this, because this is all that came with it, and I really wanted to use it, I made myself a cast-on bonnet. This is usually the first thing people make when they get one of these things. It's just a piece of knitted fabric. To do a picot edge, you just transfer the needles over once for one row to make the little gap, and then you pull one of the little threads up, and that's what you put through the middle here, every over the needle to cast on, which is a lot easier than using the instrument of destruction. And then I put a little key ring in it to hold the weight stack. So this is one of the first things I made, and then I could start knitting socks. It was a learning journey, as everything is. We start off with waste yarn. When we go, I have a lot of it. I reuse it, and I put it. It goes through the one thing, through the guide, under this, and down through the middle. And there's no tension on this at all. In fact, when you prepare your yarn, it's advised to double wind the ball to make it very loose, because when you wind it from the swift, you put some tension into the ball, and you don't want any cup kinking, any tension, anything. So you wind it through again to make it loose, and then you'll have a successful project on the wall. The weight stack, I'll show you that in a moment. Just get this put through. First of all, there, it's easier for me to see what I'm doing if I have it the right way. So you get some, what I call my dental tools. This one's just a simple metal pick, and this one's a latch tool. And they're long because if it drops, you can go inside and pick it back up again to put it back on your
Did
needle.
that come with the machine too? Or?
These were made, these are new bits. They came with the whole package when they sent it to me. They had it in working condition for me.
Wow.
Yeah, so he manufactures these, and they're not very expensive.
Oh, fantastic.
So they do, now they're getting ready to sell their business, actually, and just concentrate on the older machines.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So this is going to be our thread when we get going. The new way to cast on is to get what's called a universal cast on bonnet. These are purchasable. There's a lady out in BC that does circular sock machines, and they have little metal rings on the end. And this goes down in the middle, and we're going to do that. And you start hooking them on. This is how you cast on with these machines. And you're putting it over every other hook. You're like on one, skip one, on one, skip one, all the way around. And this doesn't take too long.
Kat, just a question.
Sure.
Where did you get all the information on how to do all this?
Oh, I live way too much on the internet.
Thank goodness for the internet.
If you go on YouTube and search anything about CSMs, or circular sock machines, there is so much information out there now.
Okay.
Having said that, some information isn't there. And that's where I ran into a little problem when I was first learning how to use it.
Yeah, I remember you not whining, but
complaining a little bit.
Yeah, I remember
the
that.
words.
Yeah.
The words.
Yeah, a lot of them.
This is a tension. This little knob here is the tension rod, and this brings the feeder up and down. If you have it up too high, the tension is going to be way too high for the needles. It'll cause the needles to pull in, off, and collapse and pop out. So I didn't know that, and I didn't know where the knitting should hit. Turns out the bumps of the little loop, so your purl bump, hits right on the edge of the cylinder. If you have it there, you know you've got the right tension. So when I take this cylinder out, the 64 cylinder, and move it into the 72, I have to change the tension a little bit. Not a lot, just enough to make the bumps hit where they're supposed to go.
How ingenious.
It just fascinates me. And I'm like you. How many hands have turned this crank? How many things have been made off this thing? Right? So,
amazing.
as you can see, it kind of pops up. It's not down. The tension on it wants to be pulled right down. So now what I do, I've got the first set of rings done. I'm just going to go around with my little tool, because I can't see on that side, and pull down the hooks. You don't want your latches, you want them wide open. So on the first row, as the thread reaches around, it'll catch and start knitting. Oh. Now this is an open case circular. They come in open case and closed case. They're referring to this jacket that goes around. This is what spins around. And on Millie, it goes on an angle, and it also has a piece here that goes on the angle, which I'll show when I get to the other side. That's what's pushing the needles up and down. On a closed case, they have little levers inside that push the needles up and down. So it basically just does like a wave. Now let's see if she'll knit right now.
Under pressure.
She's not in her home.
Under pressure.
But we're trying to make her feel welcome.
Exactly, I think you did.
Okay.
I put my hand in and I push the bonnet towards the cylinder, and I'm putting some downward pressure on it so that it will, well, it, in theory, catches. And you can hear it popping. So it missed that one and it got those ones, but it brought up these other needles so I can continue to put the bonnet on. And it is very easy to work once you get going. And like everything that's new, it's a learning curve. Now, I was lucky as a kid. My parents had a store after my dad retired from the Navy down on Portland Street in Dartmouth in the 80s. And they carried Lopi and Mary Maxim because that was what was popular in the 80s.
Mary Maxim.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were the maritime distributors for it at the time. They also sold Brother flatbed knitting machines and Passat double bed knitting machines, which might not mean much to anyone, but the needles are the same as these, same principle. So when I got this home, I at least had that experience in my back pocket to sort of bend it, use the flatness that and how to use them to do these ones. So now we've got the rest of these up. We're gonna, it looks like she's gonna be a good knit today. And usually if it's not working properly, it's probably because of me. Either I forgot to put a latch down or I forgot to oil the needles or something like that. So now we're putting our waist yarn in. We are going to get her buckle, which is in here. There you go. This is a buckle. This is what you hang the weight off of. You naturally want to do this to put the weight on it, but you always put the eye to the sky, because when this snaps down over, it closes against the cloth and provides the weight to hold it so it doesn't slip. So that's where we put our little buckle on now. I'm gonna get Darth. This is
Darth.
This is a weight stack. This weighs
Yeah.
quite a bit. It weighs, actually, if you want to pass this one, you need two hands. One hand. It's a little heavier than that one. That's my heel fork weight. And that's what's hanging down off the bottom of this for the tension, just like those I cords. Yeah. The reason we have Darth is because this is cast iron, and when it falls on your toe,
Ouch.
it really hurts. And it also puts a beautiful dent in your floor.
That's where my mind went before your toe. So
I rolled off.
See? I know. It's aggressive.
You managed?
Yep.
It rolled off. Didn't expect you to.
I can put it in
That's
the
in
thing
its
over
thing.
here.
It's in its thing.
Okay.
We're good. So I'm going to put. It was a gift. I had a friend come over and I was teaching her how to use this. She had been gifted a bunch of sock yarn from her grandmother. She had only knitted chunky wool. And I said, well, I know what you can do with that sock yarn. By the time she left my house, she was not only casting on and casting off and doing the sock snakes. She had a sock snake that reached from one end of my house to the other end and back.
Oh.
And the next day her shoulder hurt.
No kidding.
But she was very excited, so I let her go. So I'm going to take my buckle. I'm going to put it on.
Yeah, it looks like a beautiful.
Well, that's pretty much what
Yeah,
it
that's
is.
what it looks like. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. But it has lots of padding, so that when this, it still hurts your foot, but you're not going to break your toe.
Wow.
So that goes on underneath, and we just slowly crank around to see if it catches.
That's it.
And it has caught, except for one stitch there. I'm going to take my dental tool, and I'm going to just, it's going around 3 needles here. I'm just going to take it and flip it back over that needle. And then I'm going to try it again. And it should knit itself. And it did. And that's, we're knitting. Except this one has decided it doesn't want to knit. And I think it's the latch, so I'm going to get rid of that one. Put a new one in. I don't fight with it.
It's gonna win.
Yep, every time.
Yep.
And then I'm going to throw that over top. There, so now we're knitting.
That is so cool.
And as you can see, you don't have to go slow. There's my end out. So I've done my waist yarn. What you do now, for most of them, if you're doing a lot of socks, which I hope to do, you never know, you pull your waist yarn through and you put in a line of what's called ravel cord. And all ravel cord is braided fishing line. I think it's 80 test or something. It's heavy duty stuff. And the reason you put this through, and you just do one row, is when you put your second row of waist on and you're running all these tubes through, because usually when you run it, you do a bunch of them at a time, you can pull them apart and separate them. I keep blanks I have a little drawer, and I keep 72s and 64s in there. Someone's birthday comes up, I have a pair of socks in a few days. Easy peasy. You can do a ribbing on this machine without a ribber. You take out every 4th needle and it'll suck it in like a rib. So you can do a full sock. You can do short rows on it for a short row heel and toe, which I'm not going to show today because that's another time.
You'll have to come back.
I
Yeah.
think so too.
Yeah.
I had it all planned.
There you go. She can't give away
I
all the
like it
secrets in
here.
one session.
Yeah.
So that goes through like that,
Wow.
and the darn thing popped off a needle, but that's okay. Just get it going. It'll be fine. And then we're going to run another bunch of waste through. And I overlap it just a little bit on this side of it, just so that the it doesn't produce a hole, which it did here because I missed a stitch, but we can fix that. So there's what I want. Another waist, and it goes round. And if you'll notice, I keep missing this hook, this spring. You don't use that unless you're doing short rows. And when you're doing short rows, you engage it so that when you're going back and forth, you're getting some tension to take up the slack, so you don't get a loop on your needles. Otherwise, you don't need it at all. You just don't use it. It'll put too much tension in your yarn, and it'll spoil your sock. So once we get going, and I hope everybody takes a turn at this, because it's a lot of fun. You just, you just crank the needle. Yeah, you just crank the needle.
Yeah.
You're going to do it, just then stop it. You're going to play with the group.
Not hard. Oh, you do. Holy.
So I'm going to put that around. I'm covering over 2 hooks to make sure it catches and covers over the, so you don't get a hole there. Sugar. There we go. And then I'm going to do another couple rows. And it runs pretty smoothly. It's not a lot of effort going in this thing. I'm going to go around like that. And I'm running it with the yarn down below. Like I could set it up on the table. The reason I run it below is as you're pulling out, as every knitter knows, you're going to get a yarn barf once in a while. This way you can catch it before it hits and gets in and pulls too much tension on stuff. So we've done that. And my scissors are missing. Scissors? Yeah. Awesome. My scissors have fallen out. They must be in the car. Oh, no, I found them. Never mind. We got them. You just cut that off. Waste is gone. I'm going to go with this stuff, which is going to be my sock. And I'm going to put this down on the floor to give it the room to run. And we'll start sock knitting. And then I'll show you what to do with all the sock tubes that you end up with.
And you can use any kind of
Any kind of sock yarn. It doesn't, for Croy I have to adjust the tension because it's a fairly thick fingering weight. Yeah. It's not as thin as the other stuff. But this is great for like indie dyer type sock, hand dyed sock, because it illustrates the beautiful pattern that turns out in them. There we go. So there we go. So I've got both of them fed in now. I hold them a little bit just to just so they don't pull themselves out. And we start knitting. And that's it. That's how it works. It goes around and around and around. It looks like they're gappy here from the weight. The little pearl bumps are just hitting the edge of the cylinder, so I know the tension's right on it. And when you take it off, like those little tiny cranker ones, it pops up and the tension closes up on it. You weren't here for that talk. This is basically a unicorn. It's not supposed to exist. It borrowed from patents, we believe, the Auto Knitter and Creelman. And then they got sued really badly. And they were told to cease and desist and destroy stock.
Yeah.
So the ones that were made and already out in the world, that's where this one came from. But so normally we put waste yarn in, and then I go to get rid of it. And then I take a piece of ravel cord, and I'll put that in, and then I'll do another sock. So I put the cord through, and I overlap it a little bit so it doesn't, you can come up if you want, it's fine.
I can see it.
And then I'm going to put this in again, through,
Like we do for the
and then I can keep going.
heel.
Yeah. It's all good.
That I don't like to do. Those kind of heel.
They seem to fit me fine. for me. That's why I do the extra 4 rows. If you don't do an extra 4 rows on those peasant heels, which is basically a toe, it doesn't quite fit your heel cap. Well, you'll come out with too short of a heel on them. And I have a fairly high arch, so I find 4 rows is fine. And plus it gets your yarn going. So I put that through, and then it starts knitting again.
The peasant heels. Where do you-
When I pick up,
Yeah.
I do 4 rows plain knitting,
Okay.
and then start my day
And then
like I do
start
my
my
toe.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's in placement. There's
That's
more
what you- yeah.
in the basket there to show.
Mhm.
But you weren't here for this either. It's plain knitting, but you can also do ribbing on this thing.
Okay.
And this is Lion Brand. It's kind of rough, and once this is washed, it scrunches up really good. But yeah, and it works if that's what you want. You don't need a lot of ribbing. I don't like a tight sock myself.
So you don't do you delatch down, or do you take every 4th needle out
Take
of work?
every 4th needle out. I'm about to do that to show you. How exciting.
Awesome sauce!
So I'm going to get this going. I'm going to do a couple of rows. The only reason I cut it is it had a little knot coming in.
Yeah.
And we all know what that's like because we experienced it twice already. But I didn't say the words. I'm very proud of myself. When I first got it,
self-controlled.
the first 24 hours with this thing in the house, I think Paul stayed in his room. He's going, why don't you take a break? And I just shoot him a look like, I'm going to get this if it kills me.
Or you.
No, he just stays away. He's good like that. He knows when to walk away. So there we go. I'm going to no things yet. We're good. So I've got just to start off. What I'm going to do now is take out my little dental tool, and I'm going to take my stitch. I'm going to get my needle out. I've got the stitch. Take my needle out. Come on. Behave.
Because we're all watching. So
Yeah,
of course
that's
it's not
exactly.
behaving.
Oh, yeah.
Of course not.
Yeah. Me and the
They want to
and the
test
dumb
your
thing.
resolve of not using sailor words.
I'm doing pretty good, I think.
You're
I'm
doing
quite
very,
impressed.
very good. Amazingly good.
Better than I'd be doing.
Anyways, you take it and you put it over the next needle.
Oh, so that way it doesn't drop then.
No.
Okay.
You have to deal with it.
With the ones that aren't working
Yeah.
well.
No. So I sometimes use my dental tool to pull the spring and just release the back, and then use the hook to get it out better. I do have new glasses, honestly, but they still need to be adjusted. I picked them up on Tuesday, and they still need to be, just whenever I try to wear them, they go down like this, so I can't see it all.
Yeah.
So just bear with me on this. Because it's best to lift it out by the butt, or use the butt to move your spring than to go in the other way. If you go in the other way, you run the chance of breaking your latches.
And, okay, mending.
Would it
Yeah.
be any advantage to moving the stitch first?
No, it's easier to hold it, I think, while you're wiggling this out so you don't drop everything. Well, for me, it might be like different people, different ways, yeah. I find-
may find different methods
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, everybody has their own way for things, for sure.
And the
Like,
purpose of doing this is,
I'm going to make a rib.
okay.
So I have my stitch out, and I don't want to use this to take it over to the other one because I don't want to bend my needle.
Right.
So I'm going to poke through my little dental tool, take it out, and just latch it over on the other one. Oops, and drop the stitch. Caught the stitch.
See, learning opportunity
Oh
here.
my gosh! Oops! Don't be doing that now. There we go. We're good. And you do that all the way around. I'm going to do one or two more just to see the results. You need more than 2 stitches done to get the results on it all. But you can put quite a bit of pull and stress on these things without having an issue.
It'd be easier to do if you took some weight off.
Yeah, but sometimes when I do that, I pop them right off the other. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a kind of like
Yeah.
whatever works.
I'd probably
So I'm
forget
just
to
going to
put
do a
it
few of them now. And we're going to
You dropped it?
Oh.
You dropped
I dropped one.
Yeah, right in front of you.
Oh, we're not going to worry about it later because we're going to be
Drop 2.
re-raveling. These aren't dropped.
Oh, okay.
These are the rib
Rib
stitches.
stitches?
Oh, sorry, I forgot.
That's all right. Except this one's supposed to be knitting and it's not, but that's okay. We can fix that. I sometimes just fudge it. Yeah, it's fine. There. And then I'm going to put the stitches back, the needles back in that I took out. This is how you do the picots, by moving them one over, not taking the needle out,
Right.
but just moving it one over and then continue. It'll leave a little hole in it for you. So. Doo-doo-doo. And your hands get very greasy, very dirty, but it saves on hand lotion. There's always a plus if you look, right?
Yeah.
I usually wear really rotten old clothes when it's first been oiled, just because it's gonna get on you. But it washes.
It doesn't stain.
I find ivory hand soap. I just rub it on it with a bit of water before I do my laundry. Takes it right out. That or the old Halo shampoo. I don't know if you remember that stuff, but
I
it
do,
would
my-
dry the grease out of anything.
My dad used
Oh,
to-
there's one needle missing still.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, right here. I do sunlight soap.
Yeah, I do
Mhm.
sunlight
Or
too.
sunlight
Yep.
dish. Sunlight dish.
And it repaired itself. And I find when you're doing this, to go at a quicker pace sometimes. Did you want to try? Come on.
I did.
Oh, good. We all
Thank you so much, Cat and Millie, the cranky knitter, for your wonderful demonstration.